On Sunday, June 26, 2016, an entire train on the infamous Tsunami Rollercoaster at M&D's theme park in Motherwell in North Lanarkshire, Scotland, derailed and fell to the ground in a terrifying incident. It was a miracle that no one died, but still 7 children and 2 adults were injured, and some of them spent years recovering from their injuries and the nightmarish disaster. It was later discovered that the ride was neglected by the park before the heartbreaking incident, and what was even more angering is the fact that the park managed to make money from the incident, even after it paid a large sum in compensation. Stay tuned for all the details of the horrific tsunami ride incident at Scotland's M&D's theme park. M&D's theme park is an amusement park in Scotland. It's quite a large and fun outdoor amusement park that also houses a big indoor section where patrons will find, among other attractions, a bowling alley, a soft play area, a golf course, and a zoo called Amazonia. After the horrific tsunami rollercoaster incident in 2016, the park has been selling off its own rides and attractions, and has been bringing in rides from the fair circuit to keep the ride lineup fresh. The tsunami ride, which operated in the park since 2004, was dismantled after the incident. It is not clear whether the park has refurbished and sold it since then or not, which is a common practice by theme parks after incidents. The 11,148-foot long and 65 feet high tsunami ride was sort of special because it was an inverted roller coaster, which means the passengers sit on an inverted train below the track with corkscrew twists, turns, and loops. It was made by the Italian company Pinfari. It was their first inverted coaster. It had a top speed of 38 miles per hour and a capacity of 900 passengers per hour. On Sunday, 26th, 2016, around 3:35 p.m., 7 children and 2 adults were loaded on the tsunami rollercoaster train, which consisted of 5 cars. At first, everything was fine, but somewhere mid-ride, the train suddenly malfunctioned while traveling at the high speed of 38 miles per hour. The terrified passengers sat helpless and terrified as the train began to violently shake, and within seconds on the next bend, the train literally detached from the tracks and derailed. The children and adults on the train were screaming from fear and the terror of steel crushing and bending. It was simply too late for the operator to do anything, as everything took mere seconds, and there was nothing that could stop the disaster. The train fell nearly 30 feet to the ground, in a horrifying scene out of a movie. On the way down, it hit part of the roller coaster's main structure. As dangerous as this mid-air collision was, it also softened the landing to some extent. The passengers included 2 19-year-old adults and 7 children. 3 were aged 11, and the others were aged 12, 13, 14, and 16. The ensuing aftermath was almost as disastrous as the incident because some people who came to the rescue literally tried to get passengers out of their seats without taking into consideration that such hasty action can lead to the deterioration of sustained injuries. A group of men even shook the ride in a desperate attempt to free a stranded child. For the first 15 minutes, the situation was quite chaotic, and the children were crying from the shock, trauma, and injuries. Many of them were also unconscious. Soon, the emergency crews arrived and began transferring all the passengers to the hospital. The names of the children were not released because they are under 18 years of age. Nevertheless, 3 of the children sustained serious injuries and required several surgeries. A 12-year-old boy was in serious condition with chest, abdominal, and leg injuries. Another 11-year-old boy suffered horrific injuries to one of his arms and hand. A 14-year-old also suffered from serious chest injuries. The other victims suffered injuries that were non-life-threatening. A 25-year-old woman who was passing by the scene was also taken to the hospital for assessment, but was released. She was simply traumatized by the falling train. One of the children, Liam Boyle, was one of the victims. This kid was praised for his unbelievable bravery when he was trapped in the wreckage of the crash. He went through 2 operations after his hand was almost completely severed and his leg was badly broken. Former paramedic Robert McCutcheon was nearby when the incident took place and jumped straight into the aftermath. He described the scene as chaotic and uncoordinated. He also mentioned that the park staff had no idea what to do. He immediately spotted that one of the boys trapped in the wreckage was bleeding quite severely. He plugged the boy's bleeding artery in his arm and immobilized his head, thus saving his life. A lady named Katie Burns, who had just come off the tsunami roller coaster and was walking past it when the carriage crashed, wrote on her social media page, "Literally got off the tsunami at M&D's and then walking past and the next lot of people get on and the full thing goes off the tracks. Honestly, never been so scared in my life. With this weather, they shouldn't be on." She described how it was like something out of a horror film. The theme park was shut for investigations, but a partial reopening was sanctioned just 4 days after the incident. It was fully reopened to the public just over 3 weeks later. However, the roller coaster was dismantled 8 months after the horrific event. It is not known whether the park has sold it or not. The investigation began immediately, and it was disturbing from the beginning. At first, the investigators had to ask a court to ban an official government inspector from inspecting theme parks until further notice. The reason for the ban of this particular inspector was because he visited and inspected the M&D's theme park merely 16 days before the incident and didn't report any issues with the tsunami roller coaster. He even issued the park a safety certificate. It was obvious from this move that the investigators did find that something was terribly wrong with the ride and should have been closed until the maintenance crew performed repairs. Sheriff Thomas Miller said about the incident, "A place of enjoyment and entertainment on that day became a place of terror." The charges against M&D Leisure say that they had failed to ensure that the roller coaster was well maintained and in efficient working order. The report stated that weld repairs on the axles of the passenger cars were inadequate, leading to the failure of the axle suspension on the 5-car yellow train. A health and safety executive investigation found that the welding metal and the axle metal were incompatible. Imagine this, 9 out of the 10 axles on the tsunami had been given a poor weld overlay repair, and in the end, 6 of them detached from the ride, causing it to crash onto the ground. The victims later secured about $1.9 million in damages for physical or psychiatric injuries. Solicitor David Nalani, who led the legal action, said, "Firstly, I would like to recognize the bravery shown by all our clients, some of whom are children whose lives have been permanently and irreversibly affected. As is now known, the accident would have not happened had the tsunami roller coaster been properly inspected and maintained by M&D's theme park." There is something about this incident's aftermath that disturbed many people. The park was running profits in the millions every year, but the tsunami ride alone was one of the biggest profit makers for the park since 2004. But for some disturbing reason, the park's owners were fined only $100,000 over health and safety breaches. Additionally, in October 2017, M&D's park received $2.1 million in insurance. People were outraged because the park literally made money from the incident even after the fine and compensation had been paid out. One of the victims' parents said, "For a company bragging about a turnover of £8 million to be fined £65,000 is disappointing. Seeing what my son went through initially and for months and years after, I am bitterly disappointed. 2 years and 8 months later, looking for some sort of justice, I don't think we received that today." Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell button to get notified every time we upload a new video that will take you to the heart of the scenes and mysteries of some of the most terrifying incidents, accidents, disasters, and paranormal events from around the world.